Welcome to the Resilient Recruiter Podcast. This is your host, Mark Whitby. My co-host today is Leanne Sarah Jones-Hunt. Hi, Leanne. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you, Mark?
Fantastic. And I'm excited because today's topic is one that is very important to us, which is mistake number 7, being a generalist instead of a niche market specialist. So, Leanne, why is it important for recruiters to be more specialist rather than generalist?
Yeah, there's several reasons, but firstly, the clearer you can be about your niche, the clearer your messaging will be. So when I say messaging, I'm talking about your website, the messages and email campaigns that are potentially going out, your LinkedIn profile, and that messaging is key in order to attract the right audience and your target market. And you can only do that if you understand your niche and you have narrowed it down and laser focused down in such a way that actually it is personalized and it does feel like you are speaking to your audience.
100%. This is so important, especially because, think about it. We're bombarded with so many messages. That includes emails, in-mails, other, social media channels, and we ignore 99% of the information that's coming at us. The things we pay attention to are the things that really resonate with us, and the way to achieve that resonance is through relevance, actually. So our brain subconsciously is doing this work for us. You can't possibly pay conscious attention to all the information that's coming at you. So your brain filters most of it out, and the only things it brings to your conscious awareness are those things which directly relate and are relevant to your goals, your problems, the priorities and issues that you're tackling, the things you're worried about, the things that are most important to you. So therefore, as Leanne says, if your messaging is relevant to your target audience, then it's much more likely to get their attention.
Mhm. Yeah. So another benefit is the actual recruitment cycle in itself. So if you have a targeted and well-defined niche, the recruitment cycle is much shorter. You have a candidate pool, almost the fish in a barrel analogy, if you like, rather than trying to start from scratch every time on a particular search, which perhaps is on one niche, then another sub niche, then another niche. Actually, being specialized means that you could potentially present a candidate to your client within 24 to 48 hours versus the generalist, where actually it is a real sort of time and effort and energy put into a search where perhaps you don't have that low hanging fruit and you don't know that industry as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Think of it in terms of recyclability of your candidates rather than starting from scratch and how much harder that is. So, as an example, a former client of mine, Ron, is a specialist IT recruiter in networking, infrastructure, and security. And in his career, he's made over 2,000 placements. So, I mean, 2,000 placements, imagine that the average fee is 20,000. That's $40 million in lifetime cash in for a solo recruiter. Now that's over like 30 years or something, but still the point is he knows because he's very lasered in, he only recruits in not only just IT, but a subset of IT roles and in one specific city. And he literally turns down business that does not fall within that niche. And as a result, he knows absolutely everybody in his market and they all know him. And what that translates to is when he interviews a candidate, he just goes to his database. He selects 4 or 5 companies that he thinks are going to be a good fit. He sends out an email and he's got 2 or 3 interviews lined up within like a couple of days. And the same when he gets a new search, like he goes into his database and in hours, he's got his short list together, not, months, weeks, or days, but literally in hours. So I'd like to ask our audience, what is typically your time to fill? How many days or weeks would it take from being instructed by a client on a new search to presenting your candidate shortlist? How many days or weeks is that? Because your time to fill has a direct correlation to how many searches you can complete in a let's say a given period, like a month. So if it takes you 4 weeks of work to make one placement, then that means you can only do maximum of 12 placements in a year, right? And that's assuming everything goes to plan, you don't have counter offers or other surprises. But if you can accelerate that so that it only takes you a week to complete 80% of the search, then that means you can make 4 placements in a month. And if it only takes you a few days to do a search, then you could be doing multiple placements per week. So speed is really, and efficiency, as Leanne said, is really a huge benefit here.
Yeah, and just to further elaborate on that, we discussed on another podcast episode, mistake number two, relying on too few clients, but we specifically highlighted about the job order scorecard. And one of the criteria in there is this role essentially within your wheelhouse? Because if it isn't, then actually that could be a fact why you aren't your sort of placement to your job order to placement ratio isn't where you want it to be, because actually you're being stretched too thin, and actually your time it's kind of diluted because you're scrambling on various different job orders that aren't actually within your specialization.
Yes, very, very well said. 100% agree. Um, what else?
So I guess what the elephant in the room here is, we're pretty clued up on the objections that come to us when we do this with our newbies that start in our training program about what could stop people from actually specializing. And there's no doubt about it, this is tough. Committing to a niche is tough. Psychologically, it feels like you're turning down revenue, for example.
Right.
And you potentially are worried about key accounts that you've worked with for many years. And we're not saying like completely cut ties here. There is a transition period that needs to happen. But there's a reason why, Mark, even on this podcast, you've interviewed now 158, 159, and actually 90% of those $1 million recruitment business owners, the common trend and theme is that they are specialists. So, it's the proof's in the pudding.
Exactly, exactly. You've correctly highlighted the internal resistance that people feel like, or the concern they have about, you know, refining their niche and being more specialist. And it's FOMO, like worrying about missing opportunities or losing business, creates anxiety in people. Um, and as you said, like the reality is, by being a specialist, you will make more money.
Yeah.
So although
Mhm.
it feels like you're, you know, reducing the potential amount of business that you could go after, the reality is, for all the reasons we've already talked about, you will be more successful. So the other thing you mentioned is regarding legacy clients. So you may have relationships that fall outside your specified market niche that you've settled on, and so it's a question of you know what you do with that. And as Leanne said, it's going to be a transitionary period. But what would you say to reassure people who are like, they think, but I really like working with this client, and I do, like, I X% of my billings is tied to that particular account.
Yeah, I'd say absolutely cash flow and being able to recruit and keep things afloat is so crucial, where if you are now looking to further niche down and become more specialist. So that transition period, there's not to say that you can't work with those legacy clients. You could let them know, what's going on in terms of the direction that you're going in, which won't affect that relationship, but also give them the heads up that they may see a different message on your website now, and your LinkedIn content, your LinkedIn profile, your messages that are going out. So it doesn't alarm them that perhaps you're, closing the door. But, you've got to draw the line in the sand. You've got to make sure that you are committing to the niche wholeheartedly and not just dipping your toe in the water, because I feel like you won't move forwards. And I've seen it before time and time again with people who, recruitment business owners are very precious and just want to cling on to something that where it's just not counterproductive as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's well said. It's
Mm.
like Michael Corleone in The Godfather. It's like every time I try and get out, they pull me back in. It's that feeling of like,
Yeah.
it's so easy and comfortable to just stay within the boundaries of what, being that all things to all people. And you don't have to walk away from your clients that you enjoy working with and which are profitable for you. So the compromise, I think, is as Leanne says, it's important to communicate with your key clients and just give them a heads up the direction you're taking things, and reassure them you're still going to be able to serve their hiring needs, but your website and your LinkedIn profile are going to be targeted to a specific area. um, but so we kind of make this distinction between um, inbound, what kind of the business that lands in your lap, versus outbound, what you're going to proactively go after with your marketing and your business development and your recruiting efforts. And so if you have one or two key accounts that you rely on, then and you're confident you can fill those jobs, you can make money, and maybe it's retained, or for whatever reason would regard it as an A grade search. That's absolutely fine. But all we're saying is for 80% of your focus needs to be on your new niche initially, and eventually that will go to 90%. And you may get to a point down the road where you've outgrown those previous accounts, and what you're doing now is so much more profitable that you do decide to move away from those legacy accounts. But you absolutely don't have to. It's just a question of, like, the majority of your time and effort is going to that new niche. It's a bit like the other analogy I use is in university. You have to pick a major. You can't get a degree in everything, right? That's literally impossible. But you can still minor in other topics that interest you. So if you're focusing on accounting, you could take a psychology course, or if you're focused on psychology, you could take a math course if you wanted to, right? But you just need to choose your area of focus and be an expert on that.
And I guess the segue for that, from that is, people are sort of asking how, but how do I do that? And it's something we teach from the get go with our program. We have our high altitude training for, it's a 4 week on ramp for our Elevate group. And the first thing we get people to do and go through is the market mapping exercise. So imagine being able to ID every decision maker, every client contact and candidate in your market, and see what that looks like. And then, rather than going on gut feels and what you think you should be going after, actually being able to apply a strategic standpoint to that and perspective, versus you just trying to figure it out as you go along and sort of winging it, if you like. So it's proven to be so helpful. People are having epiphany moments. I mean, shout out to Catherine, who's one of our newest members. She has had recently that aha in terms of her niche just by doing that particular exercise, as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a great point. So that is the goal, is you have like 90% plus of the market already identified on your database, full contact details, and you are starting to build a relationship with those clients, those candidates. And then when you have a new search, it's like you're already on third base. You just need to run it in. And as we said, that means shorter time to fill and everything. But the other important benefit of this is you achieve market mastery,
Yeah,
and you really do become the go to recruiter in your market niche. So think how that drastically reduces the competition. In the UK, there's something like 40,000 recruitment companies. It's a crazy number. And if you're a generalist, you're competing with all of them. But the more you specialize, the fewer, you know, people realistically are ever going to be true competitors to you. And it's the same actually with talent acquisition folks. Like, their job is to fill as many roles internally as possible, through their own efforts. But they do go to specialists for difficult searches, and you want to be their go-to specialist when it comes to your discipline.
exactly.
So Leanne, in terms of, like, if this is an area that people want help with and you want to learn
Yeah.
more about our coaching program, then why don't you go ahead and book a strategy call with us? You can do that at recruitmentcoach.com/book a call. And Leanne, before, let's give people a heads up on what we're covering next time. But first of all, Are there a couple of quick action steps people can take to get the ball rolling with this? Okay, so in a minute, Leanne will tell people what we're going to do in the next episode. First, let me leave you with just a couple of like if you're wondering how do we even get started on this journey. So there's two things. Number one is thinking about the parameters of how to even define a market niche. You can use the acronym FIL, which is function, industry, level, location. Okay. Our framework is even more detailed than that and has more facets to it. But that's just a simple thing you can remember off the top of your head: function, industry, level, location, fill. And the second thing I would do is look back over like your last 12 to 24 months of placements. Where have you had the most success? Because that's a clue. It doesn't mean you have to stick to that, but that would be a good starting point to decide where have you been the most successful, and why don't we double down on that? Um, but only if it's an area you actually enjoy. So that's another thing to think about. So, Leanne, what is it that we're going to cover next time we get together on the podcast?
Yeah. So mistake number 8 is not tracking your metrics. Now, this is a huge topic across our group, and anyone that we speak to, even on the strategy sessions that Mark and I both do, we hear this is where people fall short. It's one of those tasks that kind of goes by the wayside and gets forgotten about. And actually, this is the absolute cornerstone of something that can absolutely enhance and improve your business just by knowing the story through the metrics and through the numbers.
Absolutely. Well said. I'm looking forward to that, Leanne. So great talking to you as usual. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks.